way back in 2008, 2009, um, I think all my efforts were sort of towards, oh, US जाना है, you know, MS करना है, उसके बाद क्या करना है, don't know. But जाने का है, US जाने का है, सब लोग जा रहे हैं, मैं भी जाने का है. So that is the thing. But somewhere I realized, I spoke to a couple of people, some very good alumni, and they gave me a better idea of what life would be after an MS in the US. And at that point, I was like, do I really want that kind of a life? I also realized that I would be reaching the glass ceiling pretty soon as an engineer. I think that is what prompted me to go in for my first MBA. And I have a very, very solid story, a very solid why. Uh, because these admissions teams, I mean, they've dealt with, I don't know, thousands of candidates, lakhs of candidates over the years. They know who's bluffing and who's a genuine candidate. They can differentiate that very easily. So give them a reason to select you rather than reject you. I have a friend who runs a toy factory on the outskirts of Bombay. He tells me, यार वसई में हफ्ते में 2 दिन इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जाता है. Gujarat में नहीं जाता. Now, this kind of disparity in issues, right? They need to be resolved pronto, right? You can't say in like in we're in 2025. आज भी जाता है. So 1995, I still understand. जाता है, समझ में आता है. आज भी जाता है, इसलिए आज भी जाता है. So, you want to be competitive, solve all of these basic things here, and get cracking. I mean, there's no excuse there. Fourth largest economy and the way beyond. Let me say this, right? And getting that per capita income from 2,200, 5x to 10,000. Huge, huge jump, man. Huge jump. Um, just one thing I think that the country needs to focus on. You go on Twitter, everybody's talking about it. You go wherever else there are well-informed people, they're talking about it. Get manufacturing, build factories. You cannot skip, the whole manufacturing phase and jump from agriculture to services directly.
Hey folks, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Saurabh Pol. Welcome to Pol Ke Bol. Today I have with me Siddharth Sawant. He is a friend of mine, an ex-colleague. We worked together in a technology / IT company many years ago, what feels like a lifetime ago. And we have been in touch ever since. Siddharth is an engineer. He was in biomedical or biotech engineering, and from there he moved into he did his MBA. He's been a software engineer before. He's worked in IT companies. He's worked in technology companies, and in recent years he did his second MBA from Kellogg School of Management, right, Northwestern University, if I'm not
Yeah.
wrong. And he went to the
Mhm.
US, did it all while having a family of his own. And he's one of the people who works in deep tech who I know. He is right now, he consults with a few of them, and more or less his profile is he's a COO for deep tech companies, for robotics companies, right? And I'm so proud to say that I know Siddharth because he's done things which people say they will do, but they don't do. But he's done them, right? So, Siddharth, thank you so much for agreeing to take out time and welcome to the show. How are you?
Absolutely. It's a pleasure for me to be here, Saurabh, and thank you so much for having me here. And thank you so much for the kind words in the introduction. I am doing great. Super excited to be here and talk to you and yeah, talk about all things deep tech and anything else that you want to talk about.
That's fantastic. And you know what? I was just telling you, right? I was reading this news article about robotics, right? And deep tech
Hmm.
and everything. And everyone, everywhere you go, they just want to talk about AI nowadays, right? But
Right. Yeah.
and for good reason, for good reason. मैं ऑफिस जाता हूँ, हमको AI के बारे में पूछते हैं.
Yeah.
मैं घर पे आता हूँ, I'm looking at something about AI or something or the other, right? Even with my parents, I'm talking about AI sometimes. So my question to you is, like, you've been there, you know. What are your thoughts? And
Hmm.
you're a genuine tech geek, the way I see it, both from a technical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, from a managerial standpoint. Is it hype or is it real? Is AI really changing our world?
Um, you know, it's a much asked question. It's something that's been discussed a lot. I would really say it's at the peak of its hype cycle. But having said that, you will see more and more AI enabled businesses, AI enabled use cases, things becoming a little more meaningful and tangible in the future. Today we see something like, oh, I can use a chat GPT to write a cover letter or customize a logo. As simple as that. I know people have more sophisticated use cases. I use ChatGPT to trade stocks. But having said that, right, there will be more mature use cases. I think it's here to stay. Um, I think it's going to influence our lives, and not just our lives, right? We're going to grow old pretty soon. It's going to influence the lives of the generations to come, and they will sort of grow with it. They will live with it. So yeah, it's here to stay, man.
Wow, that's actually it's good to know, honestly, so that because you actually know about tech, right? And then my question to you is like, why do you love tech so much? And you've been in tech for so long, and nowadays everyone's like, hey, we are going after the 99 percentile, the 99%, the remaining 99%, and so on and so forth. You're like, nee, yaar, I'm gonna go deeper
Mhm.
into tech, even after you did your MBA, and I would say MBAs, and I'll come to that. You're still like I see you that you're obsessed with tech. Why? What made you fall in love with tech?
Yeah, I think when I went in for engineering. So here was the thing: my parents wanted me to be a chef. I wanted to be an engineer so that it was like, oh, log kya kahenge agar मैं engineer nahi hu, that kind of a thing. So I went in for engineering. But I think the real changing point for me was that uh, in the biomedical engineering course, my whole seventh semester, I had to intern with GE Healthcare. I was fortunate enough to get an internship, and I really got a chance to get my hands dirty, do a lot of things on the ground and apply all that knowledge. And I think that is the point where I really started falling in love, because for me, textbook knowledge, being in the textbook doesn't really appeal. It isn't really great for me. I would love to sort of apply that whole knowledge. So I think that is where the whole journey started, and that's what really deepened over the course of time. Be it software engineering, I worked on mainframes, be it selling motorcycles, be it selling electric vehicles and building mobility solutions around it, and now driverless cars and robots. Right? I think uh, I just love being there, and you'll not see me, not to boast too much, but you'll not see me as a business guy who sort of just sits in the desk or in the cabin. I love being there. I love tinkering with a screwdriver, checking out if the connections are working or not, and that's the thing. Maybe it comes out of that whole G interaction and internship.
Wow, yeah, that's actually true, right? You need to have that tinkerer's mindset to actually get deep into things and be like, "Ki, yes, a Q hai," So that is the whole point. You just can't be like, "Okay, I did this. I made a cover letter with ChatGPT. It's done." No, like you really want to understand. Okay, how did this come up with? What was the thought process? And you actually, the way I see it, right? Robotics is a pure application of AI. Robotics is a
Hmm.
pure application of AI with tangible benefits. It's tangible. You can
Yes.
you can touch it, you can feel it, and it has
Yeah.
actual physical evidence of its success, which is where you mentioned about driverless cars. That's,
Yeah.
for me, that's just scientific magic. It's just science fiction. It's crazy. Tell me more about your experience with these driverless cars. What do you think of them? What is the future? And then I'll ask you an India centric question, but let's stick to driverless cars and your experience with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, fortunate enough to land a job at Cruise, which is one of the pioneers in driverless cars. Um, I was more into the whole product operations bit. So my job was essentially to tell the car where to go, like do a U-turn or go right or whatever it is, and then support that whole case with data from different sources. So that was my first interaction with driverless cars. But I think the magic really happens when, for example, right, I was working on a case on making a driverless car cross railroads. It's not a very easy thing. It sounds very trivial, but it's not easy. And then I sat in the car and and I actually saw that happening, right? And that's where it's like, wow, it's just like an amusement park ride or a car ride or what, you don't know, can't really describe it. But yeah, that's what it is. But sort of what is interesting is, right, you open the boot, and the whole car right out. It's computers, sensors. It's just a whole lot of computing power, which sort of is overwhelming, frankly. The sort of tech that really goes in, and for a guy like me, a tech geek like me, it's like, bro, this is love, right? So I think that is where my interest really started and started deep. There's this enormous computing power, right, which is overwhelming at times, and looks really amazing for someone who's a tech geek, right? I think that is where the love affair deepens, uh, transferable to robotics as well, and that is where my interest in robotics really started, and yeah, that's what really makes me who I am today.
That's crazy because I remember we were in an IT company together, right? And while we were working on some
Yeah.
important problems, but it's very far away from driverless cars, man. Like, how did that journey happen? Because most people who join an IT company in India, they don't really work on driverless cars, you know. So that's my question: how did that happen? That's very interesting.
Yeah, in fact, you would be surprised to know that some of them do. So you might have heard of this company called Scale AI,
Yeah,
which
Alexander
I
Wang,
think was
yeah,
bought
bought by
by
Meta.
exactly bought by Meta pretty recently. I love that company, and I love the sort of work they do. However, the a lot of the work that they do, right, is metadata tagging, is what we used to do a lot in some of the IT companies. Even today, it happens, right? And this sort of metadata tagging, I think, I wouldn't really say it's the bread and butter, but it contributes a large amount of revenue to Scale AI. Uh, and this is done by IT companies. And Scale AI works for these driverless cars companies, robotics companies, the US Department of Defense in a big, big way. So I think we can say that some of the IT companies people are working on sophisticated stuff. It's just not talked about a lot. But yeah, coming back to my own journey, I think sort of for me, right, the whole IT experience, Tech Mahindra, particularly. That was an opportunity to learn more of growth strategy, M&A, and also, like COVID was a very difficult time. I think it was a great place to sort of be in during those turbulent times. And I also had my ambitions to go to Kellogg, and it wasn't an easy journey. Being an older candidate, having had to give GMAT multiple times, I needed that sort of bandwidth, which I think Tech Mahindra provided. So I was very clear that where did I want to work, how much time did I want to spend at work, how much time did I want to spend on my US MBA applications. Thankfully, the US MBA happened, and that is what sort of accelerated the whole push into the whole driverless car space. I remember writing in my essay as well, saying that one day I hope to be the CEO of a Waymo or a Cruise or something. Inshallah, I'm sure that will come true. Excuse me. But yeah, that's what really started that whole journey. And then at Kellogg, I was part of the Future of Mobility Club. I was one of their active members. Got a chance to interact with a lot of people there, with a lot of people from the industry. And yeah, I think after that got selected. Someone from my engineering referred me at Cruise, and yeah, it was the start of a beautiful journey.
That's actually very inspiring because what what really fascinates me is like about you is the fact that you actually did your second MBA. And a lot of people who are part of my channel's subscriber base, they are like, MBA, MBA, MBA. And I was like, guys, it's not a joke. Not because oh my god, MBA is difficult and all. It's like once you do it, like that effort is there. Ek do saal to prepare, to apply, then the 2 years that you spend over there. Then once you're out of it, like, do you
Yeah,
even know what you want to do? Right? Like if you look at someone like
true.
you are someone who has actually, you were part of the Future of Mobility Club. correct? Most people do
Yeah.
not have that clarity. And you're like, oh, I was an older candidate. No, I don't think so. I think you were a wise candidate, because most people, they will just join something which they are like, अरे ये fancy लग रहा है, हम यहाँ पे जाएंगे. Correct. Tell me about it.
Oh yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. Confusion. Tech is cool. Product manager बनना है. So whatever. So a lot of yeah, most of the people do that.
Yeah, so I really look up to the fact that you honestly did not do that, and you were like कि मेरे को पता है मेरे को क्या चाहिए. And just to you know what, before we get into Kellogg, I want you to give a recap of your entire journey, because it makes a lot of sense, you know, because it honestly talks about like, hey, you know, I was an engineer, I then worked in an IT company as a software engineer, and then you know that MBA that you did, and then the company that you worked in villages of India that you had gone. That story will really you know,
Yeah.
excite the audience and actually show people that life is not linear. Uthal puthal hota है, and ultimately you reach where you are supposed to.
Yeah. भाई full on utal putal यार. I mean, I'll talk about way back from 2009. I don't want to make it a Ram Kahani, but definitely it's important to go back to that time, right? I think what is important, Saurabh, is I've realized over the course of time that I'm very ambitious. It's a good thing. It's it can be a double-edged sword as well at times. But way back in 2008, 2009. Um, I think all my efforts were sort of towards US जाना है, you know, MS करना है, उसके बाद क्या करना है, don't know, but जाने का है, US जाने का है, सब लोग जा रहे हैं, मैं भी जाने का है. So that is the thing. But somewhere I realized I spoke to a couple of people with some very good alumni, and they gave me a better idea of what life would be after an MS in the US. And at that point, I was like, do I really want that kind of a life? I also realized that I would be reaching the glass ceiling pretty soon as an engineer. Sure, I can be a highly paid engineer, but there will be times when decisions it won't be in my hands. It'll be above me. I think that is what prompted me to go in for my first MBA. After that, Mahindra happened because I wanted to be a general management candidate, sales and marketing, etc. Start off with sales. I personally always believe that I should be on the ground, interacting with customers, selling things, and what better time to do it than your first stint, right? I mean, go out there, धक्के खाओ एकदम, जो भी रोना धोना करना है, sales targets, pressure, absorb it at that time. I think it was a super enriching experience. So that is where the whole foundation was built. And then it's like, oh, acha, iske aage kya? What next? Then started working with six CXOs of the Mahindra Group. One of them was Manish Vyas from TechM. And they wanted to build an EV mobility solution. So that was like, oh, exciting times, something new. Working with six Maharathis of a huge conglomerate, right? What could I ask for? What else could I ask for? So took that opportunity. Then the whole story started. But I think somewhere around 2019, right, I realized कि boss सब कर लिया अभी, है ना, इधर जो करना था मैंने सब कर लिया. What else could I really do here? I didn't have too many answers to that. And that is where I was like, okay, let me do the same thing. Let me be in automotive, or, at least the stuff that I'm doing, and then take it to a new geography. And then the whole thought around the US and second MBA really started. The first check I did was कि पैसा है क्या? Very frankly. That is the main thing. You have to think about it. I still have a loan that I have to pay off, but touch wood, I know where the money is going to come from, right? But anybody who wants to really think of an MBA in the US or any studies in the US has to think about it. So वो देखा. Then my daughter was very young. She was just a couple of years old at that time. So I couldn't really leave her and my wife and then go at that time. And then COVID happened, etc., etc. So with time, things sort of stabilize here at my end. Externally, things stabilize as well. So I ended up going to Kellogg in 22. So the dream was sort of realized. But I would really say, Saurabh, I've spoken a lot, but three things that really I want to talk about. One is my personal ambition and motivation. Second is having a solid financial backing. The third, I want to talk about is family support. I couldn't really have done what I did without my wife, with my daughter, and the whole family, my parents, in-laws supporting me. So I think for anybody to consider that, ये सब होना जरूरी है.
I would say this is such a beautiful point because people think that,
Yeah,
this is an individual thing. Studies and academics are an individual thing. They're not. After a point of time, you
exactly.
realize, see, because there were times in my life when my family situation wasn't that great and my academics fell off, right? And then there were times where things kind of
Right.
improved. And I was like, okay, my academic, performance has also improved. It's actually directly proportional to the health of my family relationships, is what I've realized. Because
Sure.
distractions will take you off your goal, whether it's academic or professional or personal, whatever it is. And very few people actually say that, I was able to do my second MBA because of my wife and child and others, in-laws and all, right? And this is what I want to tell everyone who's listening to this, is that don't underestimate the importance of family and support structure, right? Like many people, especially young men, they feel that, it's a lone wolf game, and वो motivation के लिए खुद को बोलते हैं मैं अकेला करूंगा ये करूंगा, and you will go far, if you won't go that far alone, and
Yeah, yeah.
if you do, you will burn out, because it's a multiplayer game.
Yep,
It's a multiplayer game. It has to be.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I personally feel, right? And I'm not kidding, right? Like there was one point you mentioned that after your first
Mhm.
MBA that you did, which was symbiosis, if I'm not wrong. So
Yeah, that's correct. SIBM
perfect.
Pune.
So SIBM Pune, one of the best colleges in the country for an MBA, and you joined the GMC program at Mahindra, which is one of the most sought after general
Yeah,
management programs in the country. Right. So that has been a high
yeah.
achiever. Having said that, there are a lot of things that you can learn from him, right? Like I actually give this dialogue, by the way, which I don't tell them
Mhm.
ki तूने बताया, because I like to steal credit. Is that I remember you had, because see, you were one of the first people who told me, bro, sales एक टाइम के बाद नहीं होता. मतलब it becomes very difficult. सबके बस के बात नहीं है. You have to really like it. You really have to love it to be in it for decades, right? Sales बहुत tough होता है.
Yeah.
Direct sales especially. So, and the dialogue you had used was, आज कितना पेटी गया? आज ये हफ्ता कितना पेटी गया?
Yes,
And I
absolutely.
still remember it in that office you were telling me. I was like, what the fuck? Is that really how it is? He's like, if you distill it to its essence, its core,
Yes,
it is aaj kitna piti gaya, and everything else is secondary, And when
yes.
I keep telling people that, whoever comes to me and he's like, कि मैं sales करूंगा, मैं ये करूंगा, मतलब कर. Sales is number one, I would say. सबको करना चाहिए. मैं भी करता हूँ sales, by the way. In my current role, I also indulge in some form of sales, and direct sales, by the way, to the customer, and it's not easy. Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
amazing.
yeah, yeah. Nee, I won't go too deep into my company and all in this, because but we do it, like, and I'm lucky that I can do it, right?
Okay.
And turns out I have
Yeah.
a flair for it. I already knew it, but one of the main reasons I didn't do sales full time was not, matlab, what you told me solidified it. But I always knew this because my first role was in operations, by the way. Not many people know this. My first
Oh,
role was in,
interesting.
yes, it was in operations, it was in logistics, it was in the warehouse. My first job was in Godrej, and मैंने झाड़ू मारा है warehouse में. ठीक है, I've discovered 4 different types of weird rodents and insects that roam around. Stock audits की है मैंने. ठीक है. I found material over there that was there since I was in half pants in school. You get me?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
you know what a stock audit entails, right? The
Yeah,
reality
yeah,
of a stock audit, right?
yeah,
And I really credit
yeah,
Godrej, right? Like they gave me that start, and but also I realized
yeah.
कि bro, मेरे को operations नहीं करने का है, मेरे को ये मेरा नहीं है. Okay, I knew it. It's a very early in my life I learned. लोगों को 7-8 साल बाद पता चलता है. I don't like operations. I झोपा काढत होता का तुम्ही. But one other team I worked with very closely was the sales team, and I was like,
Hmm.
bro, the
Yeah.
pressure on the salespeople. I learned at the age of 20, I don't think I will be able to sustain this. I looked at that and I was like, I can do this, but I can't sustain this. ठीक So, and when you told me about it, I was like, भाई ये तो अपना senior है, ये तो MBA है, इसको मतलब he's from Symbian and all, like he knows what he's talking about. So I want you to tell the audience and also reflect back upon your experience in sales. कहाँ गाँव में जाते थे, कैसे करते थे, and so on and so forth, right? Like that's something which everyone will benefit from.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I think sales just got me a little too excited. All the memories coming back. But hey, you know, uh, First thing, right, about sales, I was posted to Bangalore, okay, which I felt that it's fine, right? Bangalore, I've been there, I know the place, etc. Uh, and then end of the first week, my manager told me, "Oh, you have to go stand at the corner of a street under a pandal and sell motorcycles." And I'm like, ठीक है यार क्या मतलब it's a like a little strange in Kormangla especially I remember that. I was like ठीक है यार उधर क्या हिंदी हिंदी तो then I went there and I'm like, bro, क्या बात कर रहा है यार? What are they saying? I couldn't understand one word of Kannada. The people who were selling were speaking Kannada, etc. So, so that was like a big culture shock for me, right? Because I mean, I speak Konkani as a mother tongue, but it's very different from Kannada. But then I had to learn. I had to learn Kannada. Everything. Like I can speak enough of Kannada to save my life. So that was one thing that I had to do in sales. The next is go in villages, up country, Karnataka, all the different towns around Bangalore, which were still villages back then. I think still are even today with a tractor and farms and all of that, and sell motorcycles, scooters there. Manage a lot of objections. Mahindra, unfortunately, at that time was going through a rough phase, and there were a lot of objections that were coming in from people. So manage those, manage a lot of disgruntled dealers. Um, and I still remember, there was this new dealer who was being instituted and being brought up in Ramnagar, where they shot Sholay. So that guy used to speak in Kannada, and I used to speak in English or Hindi. But somehow that wavelength matched, huh? Because then I used to speak his language, saying, "Oh, X number of vehicles, this much money, this, that, whatever." And then he's like, "Oh, okay, this guy can work for me. So, chal, baat karte hain." And that's how that relationship sort of started building. I think whoever really wants to do sales or doesn't want to do sales, coming back to that particular point, right? I would tell them one thing: sales really, one is that there's a lot of change, right? You have to be dynamic, and that dynamism is helpful, right? Because business, that is business, right? Top line वही है, sales है top line. There is a reason for that. बाकी सब बाद में आता है उसके. So go in for it, right? The second is the pressure, right? I mean targets. अच्छा नहीं हुआ तो गाली सुनो, ये करो, all of that. It doesn't sound good at that point in time. Obviously ego hurt होता है काफी. मैं MBA, मैं GMC, मेरे को ऐसा कैसा बोला, all of that. but but it's real. It's real. It comes from people who've been there, who've done the hard yards. They know what they're talking about, right? And then it's an important moment of reflection, Saurabh. And I didn't realize this till years later. Um, One of the things that really needs to be taught in Indian B schools, I don't know if they do it now, right, is gap analysis. एक तो target नहीं achieve किया तो analytically go down, do that root cause analysis, कि why it hasn't happened, and then give a very realistic picture, right? ऐसे नहीं कि अच्छा मैं करूंगा अगले महीने में, अच्छा भाई कैसे क्या, and then create a whole believable case around it, right? And that sort of thought process comes in operations, comes in sales, right? Uh, and I think every person who's doing an MBA. In fact, my wife is an HR. She was in Vodafone. The first 3 months of her Vodafone stint, she had to do sales, literally go and sell SIM cards. So I think everyone should really try it out. Short stint karo, kuch bhi karo, but it teaches you a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a beautiful point, and I keep reminding people that MBA से अगर आप सेल्स एंड मार्केटिंग कर रहे हो, वो मार्केटिंग नाम क्या है, एक्चुअली सेल्स है. ठीक है, मोस्टली आप सेल्स ही करने वाले हो,
हाँ,
एंड मोस्ट पीपल आर लाइक, आई एम टू
हाँ,
फैंसी, व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू इज आई एम गोना गो टू लोअर परेल एंड आई एम गोना गो टू दिस फैंसी कांच का बिल्डिंग, वहां पे एसी रहेगा 22 डिग्री पे, और वहां से मैं मार्केटिंग स्ट्रेटेजी बनाएगा. So that is what most people think in India is what going to happen to them when they get into an MBA college for marketing.
yeah,
It's not, right? I am probably one of the very few people I myself know who has been in marketing since day
Hmm.
one, since my MBA was done, right? And I could have very easily. There were times where I was like, I made a mistake. I was like, ये नहीं करना चाहिए था मेरे को.
Hmm.
And because that's a different
Okay.
episode altogether. Ki, why, the struggles of being a marketeer, because and the first thing is ki, oh
Yeah.
no, it's not about ki, oh woe is me, and it's like हमारे साथ बुरा होता है. Like it's like marketing is not taken seriously in B2B setups. And धीरे
Yeah.
now it is very different in B2C
Right.
setups where marketing is considered a crucial function, a demand generation function. In
That's correct.
fact, marketing leaders own the
Yes.
P&L in B2C companies. In B2B companies, they don't even have their own budgets at times. You get me? So that is
Yeah.
the main difference, right? But sales is where it's at. Because I keep telling people, यार अगर तुमको sales आ गया ना तुम बाकी सब कर लोगे. Sales is the toughest thing.
I absolutely, absolutely, and not to be disrespectful. And sorry for cutting you off, Sarah, but do want to button on this point, right? Um, Not to be disrespectful to any different functions, but sales gives you an overall picture of all the different functions, right? I mean, like nothing else, like no other role. If I just say that, not even production, not even being in the factory, maybe to some extent, maybe you'll have a flavor of finance, you'll have a flavor of it because you're preparing budgets, but you're not there on the ground. You're not dealing with channel partners or customers like the salesperson is. So I think sales is, and then you have to manage people, man. I mean, that's a different ball game and a different challenge at times. So they were doing the HR bit as well.
100%. And here's the thing, right? The thing with sales is कि वो आपको it forces you to you use the word objection handling. It's a very MBA term,
Yeah.
right? Like the actual if you want to translate is गाली खाना. And फिर भी उसको बेशरम की तरह बोलना कि नहीं 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 अरे नहीं करवा देंगे वो जो हुआ वो गलत हुआ है वो नहीं
Yes.
भूल जाओ अरे ऐसा नहीं है ऐसा है अरे उसने आपको झूठ बोला है अरे उसका वैसे नहीं
Yeah.
है so objection handling is all. And see, being an MBA, especially being a marketer MBA, right? It's the worst of both worlds. The most pretentious sort of a human being you can come up with is an MBA in marketing, right? And being one, I at least like to believe I'm self-aware. Right? ये सब नहीं होता. I like to distill things and be like, okay, actual reality बताओ. I mean, I remember speaking to a friend of mine and she said, and वो तो लड़की
Yeah.
है, ठीक है? वो एक लड़की है, उसकी लड़की दोस्त है. लड़की
Hmm.
दोस्त उसकी is from I am
Okay.
Calcutta or something, was from there, and basically वो बंदी she joined one of the biggest FMCGs in the country, and उसको भेज दिया मतलब गांव गांव खेड़े में जाके बेचो, यहाँ पे साबुन बेचो, ये बेचो, वो सब FMCG basic, right? And when asked what is the biggest challenge you have,
Yeah.
she said toilet ढूंढना. The biggest challenge.
Yes. Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
that is what I want people to actually know about. Because my nephew was being interviewed recently, and one of the questions was the nearest airport to this place where we are going to send you is 9.5 hours away in a state जिसका language तू बोलता नहीं है. ठीक है, वाईफाई नाम की चीज नहीं है. वो तो अभी थोड़े टाइम पहले अंबानी जी ने थोड़ा दया खा के उधर इंटरनेट भेजा करके वो मिला है वहां पे. ठीक है, like workable internet in that area. So, and you are someone who updates one Instagram post a day. How the hell are you going to go over here? So, I want you to, actually tell people that reality of sales also, especially in India, especially in B2C sales.
There was this very, very tough guy in Bangalore. Gave me a very, very hard time. Extremely egoistic. We used to call him Henry Ford because that's what he used to think of himself. Never liked any sort of questions, suggestions, nothing. All he wanted to do was just complain, saying that ये scooter खराब है, ये bike खराब है, this, that, you haven't given me money. Boss man, punishment posting था उसके पास जाना, literally. But then what did I have to do? I had to handle it. I still remember, once I hurt his ego and he went and complained to my boss. But every time he complained, right, my boss would tell me एकदम calmly, saying that, देख भाई, ये ऐसा ऐसा हुआ है, इसको manage. Then I have to go, just swallow my pride. I'll go and say sorry to him, right? And then sit with him nicely, and then maybe have a coffee, right? And then talk about worldly things. अच्छा ये फ्रांस में ये गाड़ी लॉन्च किया चाइना में ये हो गया वगैरह the guy used to get very excited. So I think, all of those small, small lessons, right? People ask me, how, a lot of times, they ask me, oh, how are you going to break the ice with someone you don't know? I said, just share a cup of tea or maybe a beer or whatever, right? And then talk about different things. People lower their guards, right? The trick is to know how to do that and what topic to bring up to build those connections, right? And sales teaches you that. Sales definitely teaches you that because I'm an introvert. I should have already told that earlier. Complete introvert. Very difficult. It was very difficult for me to strike conversations, but sales really changed that. Kellogg changed that even more because then I learned how to strike conversations with different people across the globe. But yeah, I think sales really builds your character.
Absolutely, absolutely. And going from there and actually वो बोलते हैं ना धंधे को घोल के पीना. So when someone
एकदम.
actually does that, I really respect them. This is why I really respect you and your achievements so far, because I honestly am not a fan of people being freshers and doing their MBA. I'm like, at least 2 साल काम करो, 1-2 साल काम करो, देखो कि how bad it is out there, and then come back to
Yeah.
your MBA, and actually it will make much more sense. Those lectures you will relate to them, and so on and so forth, right? So the
Yes.
and someone like you decided to do your second MBA. Was that because you were like, I want to completely get out of something, like, because not everyone can do that, okay? Not everyone can do that. Very
Mhm.
few people, as you said, okay, there were financial responsibilities also that you mentioned, right? So how does
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
even do that, like a second MBA? And you are probably the only second person I know who's done a second MBA. Usually they are done outside of India.
Okay.
And another person I know who we both
Yeah.
know, he's done a master's. He's done a master's, and he's now in the Netherlands, right? So without naming him. So yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
Yes.
floor was very,
Yeah.
very, very fertile floor in that sense, in terms of educational qualifications. So I mean,
Yeah.
how do you, why should one do a second MBA? And if you do, what should you think of? What
Mhm.
should you factor in?
Yeah. Not a very easy question to answer, sort of. And why should one do a second MBA? You should do a second MBA, or one should do a second MBA. One, if of course, ambition, right? But just being ambitious is not enough, right? They really, really have to have that strong motivation uh, to go outside of India. Since we're talking about doing a second MBA outside India, go outside of India, make their mark, right? Be motivated enough to live alone in a deserted town. I lived in Phoenix. I lived in Vegas for some time. Not a very enjoyable situation, to be honest. Living there alone without your family, but be prepared to do that. And at the same time, right, be uh, be able to compete with the best in the world because places like, let's say, a Kellogg or a Cornell or any of the top B schools, right, they literally get the best in the world. Um, so you have to learn how to compete with them. You really have to have the motivation to do that, right? I think it really comes down. I keep harping on that word, but after a lot of reflection, I've realized it comes down to that. Why should one do it? Then that has to be, like I said, backed by financial support and family support. So then you can really think of doing a second MBA. I think the real thing what you should consider also, right, while doing a second MBA, beyond what I've already spoken about, is how good are you at your craft? Are you going there to because second MBA is generally an accelerated MBA, right? You're building upon what you already know, and colleges consciously choose those candidates who have a solid understanding, who spent some time in the industry, and they want to sort of get an accelerated path to a new geography, or let's say a related industry, or maybe a different role in the same industry. You can change two variables between geography, industry, and function. And mostly it's geography and I would say function. So that is something that you really have to consider, um, and you have to be good at your craft, right? Then having the right sort of recommenders, having the right sort of scores, GMAT, GRE, whichever one you're giving, right? I think that is super important. A lot of essays, right? I mean, I've seen, I do some advising on the side, pro bono, just to help people draft their MBA essays. I've seen both sides. I've seen people who are very straightforward and people who are so flowery and poetic that I don't know. I mean, Wordsworth would probably be start blushing. But it give a very strong statement on why MBA, why that MBA. Uh, if you ask this question to a lot of the folks in India, I'm sure you wouldn't get any, great answers. I'm sure I wouldn't probably have a great answer during my turn. I would have said very clearly कि अच्छा मेरे को बड़ा कंपनी में जाना है पैसा कमाना है, but that won't be accepted. But yeah, that why has to be very strong, and the whole story needs to be supported with your recommendations, with your scores, with your past record, right, of being promoted, etc. So all of these considerations go in. So I'll just quickly summarize, for the benefit of our viewers. The thing is, why should you do a second MBA? Yes, if you're ambitious enough to take your craft to a new geography, or if you're looking for a change in the industry in a new geography, then you should do a second MBA, and if you're supported by financials and your family. What should you consider? All the things that go into your application materials, exams, essays, recommendations. And I have a very solid story, a very solid why. Uh, because these admissions teams, I mean, they've dealt with, I don't know, thousands of candidates, lakhs of candidates over the years. They know who's bluffing and who's a genuine candidate. They can differentiate that very easily. So give them a reason to select you rather than reject you.
That's a very good answer, right, Sid? Because what and you used a word which most people forget: story. People don't
Mhm.
have a story.
Yes.
I've seen it. Like they still, and India. I think it's an Indian thing. We consider everything as a bullet point, as a check mark, as a
Yeah.
checklist. We don't know how to do things in a free flow state. Okay, like, and if convert those list of things into something which has a form and then present it, because that's how people understand. There needs to be a logic. And the frankly, the reason
Mhm.
most Indian people, I personally feel, Indian students, they don't have a story is because they don't have a story.
Mhm.
All they have is a bunch of decisions. And
Yes.
those decisions are not even made by them, right? Most of them. उसमें भी
Yes.
एक टाइम पे कभी रेबेल
Yes.
वेबेल कर लिया तो खुद का एक डिसीजन आ जाता है, which looks very weird on that entire thing. Like, okay, what was going on? Because what these college admission folks want to see, from the way I understand and know things a little bit, is they want to see consistency of vision. They want to see, they want to see what is your reason to क्यों कर रहा है जो भी कर रहा है,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So I mean, I haven't applied for my second masters, but this is my understanding of things, because I've spoken to people who have done that, and I kind of understand these things a little bit, right? कि क्या है, तू कौन है? Because everyone around you is a 99.99, okay, or a 730, like GMAT का पकड़ो तो, right? तो तेरे में और वो बाजू वाले में
Yeah.
क्या फर्क है भाई? And that is why people
Yeah.
don't understand this. And I always tell people that, hey, when you look at your CV, look at it as, I tell people, I don't want to see your CV. I want to see two paragraphs about you. मेरे को देखने दे तू कितना लिख
Mhm.
पाता है उसको, and yeah, you will be like, and not a
Okay.
cover letter. I don't mean a cover letter. I'm like, I want a story. I
Right.
want your story, who you are, where are you
Yeah.
from, what do you want to do,
Yeah.
and where do you want to go,
Correct.
and why. That's it.
Correct.
What तो मेरे को 2 मिनट में मिल जाएगा, तू कौन है क्या है. I want your why. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is
Yeah.
the most important thing.
It really is. The why has to be very strong. And, just moving on to a related topic here, Saurabh. I'll tell you why the why is also important. One is definitely when you sit for recruitments, right? Very clearly, the person who's recruiting you or the company that's going to recruit you, they want to have a very strong story, right? They have to know why did you actually take the effort of leaving your family or taking up a loan and then coming all the way here, going through the grind, and now you're applying here. Are you going to stay here and give it your 100%, or are you going to go back? And these people are very well trained to identify, like I said, right, genuine from others. So that is one of the reasons why the why is important. The second is from the academics perspective in the class. One of the best cultures that I saw at Kellogg is that during a case study discussion, it's all case based. Um, People are expected, as a norm, table stakes, whatever you call it, right? People are expected to build upon each other's points. Um, in Indian B schools, it's different. I've been guilty myself of cutting other people, and I know that other people cut other people. It happens in GDs, etc. It's fairly competitive. There's a different level of competition here, so I know why it happens. But in the US, or in global B schools, you are expected to build upon other people's points and bringing in fresh perspectives, right? Um, that really matters. And if I had to relate to it, right, if your why is strong, right, it brings in clarity of thought. So you're not contributing some garbage in the class. You're actually contributing valuable points, and then building a better answer or a better solution in the class that contributes to everyone's learning.
That's such a beautiful point because and let me tell you why this happens. This is my understanding of it. India में ना सब कुछ काटा काटी है, right from the football field to your local train to your classroom to the bank का ATM का line. This is a nation which has scarcity built in its DNA. Okay, like, and it is because it is
Yes,
true. It is not true because I'm saying
it
it's true.
is.
It is true because it
Yeah,
is true. ठीक है. It has been a nation which has grappled with scarcity for most of its modern history. Okay, in fact, for the last 300 years, so easily we
yes,
have been grappling with scarcity on multiple levels. अभी जाके 15, 20, 25 साल पहले जाके our food problems have been solved in some way or form. Correct. तो मतलब
yeah,
even
yeah,
so,
yeah.
and in fact, here's the challenge though. There is a culture in India. If you
Mhm.
don't cut the other guy, you are considered weak.
Mhm.
कि इसमें दम नहीं है,
Oh yeah.
ये टिकेगा नहीं, ये ऐसा लोग नहीं चाहिए, ही डजंट वांट इट, मेरे को
Yes.
ऐसा ये नहीं,
Yeah.
हंगर नहीं दिख रहा है, अरे हंगर दिख रहा है तो मैकडॉनल्ड जाओ, काय को इधर जीडी में आया तू? हाँ, मतलब दैट इज व्हाई आई टेल मी आई एम
That
रॉन्ग,
is
लाइक डिड यू
so
फील?
true. It is so true. It is so true. I still remember, one of the prominent pharma companies. They came to our college in SIBM. We used to be one of the biggest recruiters, and they chose two people who I would say yelled at the highest pitch in the GD, and the rest were just rejected, clean rejected, because dum nahi hai, hunger nahi hai. So you are absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think we Indians reward ranty behavior. In Marathi, it's called ranty. It's basically English version of rowdy, right? Like we because
Yeah.
everything is so chaotic. Only a strong man or a strong woman can control the chaos and rise
Yes.
above and give us direction, right? And that is how
Yes.
the generation of leaders I have seen in both public and private life. I've seen this. जो जितना ranty है उतना उसका chance of success हो जाता है. I have seen it, right? Of course, they expect you to have the brains, but they also want you to have the brawn, right. So it
Brawn.
has to go hand in hand, right? Coming back, like you mentioned, you touched upon something which I really want to discuss, right? What were the main differences between the
Mhm.
MBA you did in India and the MBA you did abroad, right? And you did it from elite institutions in both places. So what was the difference? And don't worry, I won't call you an anti-national for criticizing something in India, right? Like I think there are a lot of things we do very well, and if you're not doing things well, तो वो gap analysis
Mhm.
आपने बोला ना, तो वो होना चाहिए ना कि find out why has something not worked out so far.
होना
How,
चाहिए,
and
बिल्कुल
if
होना
you
चाहिए.
if you are saying that hum log we are going to be, this is going to be the Asian century and India is going to lead here and there, which I believe it will happen, right? Sooner rather than later. My point is better sooner than later,
Yeah,
because if you lose a decade, you're
that's correct.
losing millions of people into poverty. So then you have to compete on a
Yes.
global level. So how is our
Yeah.
teaching different from the teaching that happens on a global level?
Great question. And this comes from me learning about at SIBM and spending a few days at IIM Ahmedabad during one of the Mahindra programs as well. Um, I would really say the biggest difference, right? I mean, let me compare a median top B school and a median top US school, right? In India and the US. I would really say there is a case-based method, yes, in both places, sure. Um, in India, I think there is a lot more focus on rote learning. Ratta marna is what we call it. Exam mein, you are expected to regurgitate what you've learned. Economics, I'll give you the best example. It was, one of my best teachers at SIBM taught us microeconomics. I didn't understand jack shit, dude. Trust me. I did not understand anything. He just told that the curve moves this way and this moves that way, and okay, so what? What do I do? Um, in the US, I took a course on oil economics and new energy economics. And that is where I really learned the demand curve. That is where I really learned the supply curve, price, Q, etc. And sort of that is really, it's made me a different person. Really, it's made me a different person. The way it was taught, the way the applications were taught, because we were looking at, okay, Texas, I think Permian Basin, they're taking out oil. What is it going to be priced at? Blah, 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 vis-a-vis Saudi Arabian oil, something, excuse me. It's easy for you to visualize that. And I can write volumes about, or whatever, the right answers. I don't want to write volumes, but I can write the right answers in the exam. I can use the same knowledge to, to maybe design a new pricing algorithm for one of the ride-sharing companies that I'll work on in the future, or maybe advise one of the robotics companies, right? So everything is completely application based. Everything, and by the way, um, talking about economics, everything is based in economics. Literally, like I do a course on productivity, strategy, like general business strategy, economics. In India, it was ये कंपनी ने ये इनिशिएटिव किया, मार्केट में सेल्स था, this that, and yeah, I'm not going to criticize it or be critical about it because that was probably what was needed at that point in time for a marketing course. But here it was more first principle sort of approach. That is one. The second thing is, like I said, the culture, right? About in the class, you're not cutting other people. In fact, if you cut someone like twice, right? You get there are marks for class participation. You get negative marks for that, and I think the professor is also at the discretion of sending you out of the class. So you are expected to build upon others' points. In India, it's a free for all in a lot of places. So yeah, that's again another difference, right? I think the third thing is there's a lot of focus abroad on things such as productivity, on tech, right? Tech is it sort of it just I would say it goes hand in hand with whatever is being taught. Indian B schools have some way to go. Everything abroad is database, and rightly so, because workplaces there are database. Any argument you have to make, you have to have a solid data point to substantiate your thought. I think in India it's like, oh, मेरे पास 20 साल का experience है तो मैं जो बोलूँगा वो सत्य वचन है. That happens in a lot of places. That sort of trickles down to the B school as well, which I think needs to change. So yeah, these are 3 points that I think are very very different in global B schools compared to India.
That is amazing. That thank you so much. You actually got deep into it and gave me, like those tangible examples, and I'm sure our audience is going to love this, right? I remember I was listening to actually one very big industrialist of our country, and he had just come to our college, and he said he went to Harvard, right? He went to Harvard Business School, and he said that they actually recorded the way we interacted with people in certain classes, and there was a team of
Yeah.
people who judged your body language, who judged the way you came
Yes.
across, and so on and so forth. I was like, wow. Firstly, I'm failing that class. ठीक है. Second, I was like, मतलब bro, मतलब ये किस level पे ये लोग operate कर रहे हैं, correct? So this is the finish, that touch, that that intangible, जो बोलते हैं ना, intangibles of a person, they're building that in a very tangible manner, right? In India it is like कि
Right.
अरे वो उसका असाइनमेंट सबमिट नहीं किया, वो 12 बज के 10 मिनट के पहले, क्या कर रहे हो तुम? अरे अरे वो प्लेस कॉमर का रूम में जाओ, देखो उधर क्या चल रहा है, कौन कितने लोग पड़े हैं वहां पे भीख मांग रहे हैं, वो सब. So that is the level at which we operate sometimes, which I think which we can learn from them, frankly, right? And
Absolutely.
and here's the thing, right? I will not criticize Indian students, because the same people, you were an Indian student once, the same people when they go abroad,
Yes.
उनको एजुकेशन जब वो मिलता है, they become exceptional, right? Dude, I know for a fact I will go abroad, like I will honestly learn better. Okay, like, and I mean, because of the industry that I'm part of, I have worked a lot with people who are not Indians, right? Majority it's Indians, but
Hmm.
people who are not really, and they're from diverse backgrounds and all, right? Different countries and everything
Sure.
and everything. I never knew the importance of efficiency and productivity. Like
Hmm.
these are words to sabko malum hai, but actually living by them,
Yeah.
not only by your own schedule, but even the solutioning that you're giving. We don't want brute
Mhm.
force solutions. Anyone can come up with it. We want much more
Yeah.
sophisticated solutions, and then the way your thinking
True.
changes, that I think doesn't happen in Indian places. And you're absolutely right कि इंडिया में क्या है कि पापा ने जो बोला वही करना है, बचपन में वही होता था, ठीक है? आप बड़े हो गए, लाइक यू गो, लाइक प्रोफेसर ने जो बोला है वही होना है, एचओडी ने जो बोला है वही होना है, एंड देन ऑब्वियसली इट गोज अप एंड कि बड़े साहब ने जो बोला है वही होना है. एंड सो
Yeah.
व्हाई वेस्ट टाइम विथ एनालिसिस ऑफ द माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक्स एंड डिमांड कर्व एंड ऑल, लाइक I mean, people will laugh you out of the room if you're
Yes.
going to implement all that. Try implementing any of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, in fact, sort of two things, I definitely want to say. They're related to your question, but I think important for our viewers to note. One is that global B schools, right? One needs to recognize that a significant chunk of the students go into consulting or, let's say, private equity finance roles or tech product management, right? I would say comfortably about two-thirds of the class. At least it used to happen before the downsizing in tech happened. At least 66% of the class used to go here. So I understand why global B schools teach the way they do because they are sort of creating a product to serve these kind of industries. In India, it's a different story. Most of I mean, there are consulting firms that go to certain B schools, but a large chunk of the firms either goes to banks or FMCG, where they have to eventually go into villages. So, that knowledge that this company ran an initiative and that was successful, etc., is important from an Indian context. However, what is important is to know why they did it, right? The why behind it, or the microeconomics behind it, uh, and the data and the numbers behind it, the funnel behind it, and the ROI, and all of those ROAS, right? Favorite term, the ROAS behind it. I think that is something that Indian B schools have to talk about. Like, I mean, it has to be that, nothing else.
I mean that. Thank you so much for, because that's the reality, right? That's the reality because they don't want to send out a product in the market, and let's not forget, MBA students are products. They don't want to send out a product in the market where
Yeah.
the buyer, who's the corporate, comes back and says, "क्या है ये?" We want थोड़ा मेटल वाला लोग, मतलब थोड़ा बाजुओं में शक्ति वाला लोग चाहिए हमको. ये क्या ये सब भेजा है तुमने? So and also they want people जो 1 रुपया डाल के 10 रुपया निकाले. Correct, because there is
Yes.
scarcity of capital also. Jeff Bezos recently said
Yes.
that the reason the US is doing so well is because always does so well in these things and innovation and technology is because they have higher risk capital. They have abundant risk capital, which is where you have more money to fail. And 9 things will fail, one will succeed, and that one success will outdo the 9 failures, right? This is how you
Yes.
keep going forward. And I completely agree with Mr. Bezos on that front ki India mein credit ka bahut problem hai. Correct. So that is why all the solutions that they want and the teaching that we have is, देखो ये काम किया था ना, वो कंपनी ने जो कैंपेन किया था, तुम भी ऐसा ही कुछ करो इधर. So I think it's a bit of a stretch, but that is the way I think we can agree on this fact, right? Ki, and I remember it is like quite, unless you work in a small company, really trying out and experimenting things is not really promoted where we work, in India mostly, which is
That's
unfortunate,
true.
I personally feel. But anyway, speaking of India, I think what we are the fourth largest economy now, and
Yeah.
the best way to gain views on YouTube is to complain about how horrible it is to live over here. And कि अरे फोर्थ लार्जेस्ट है तो अपना फोर्थ बेस्ट भी होना चाहिए, like standard of living and all of that. And GDP per capita wise, so I think we are in the 120s or 130s, if I'm not wrong, right? Like, so it's shockingly
Yeah,
bad.
pretty
uh,
low. Yeah.
yeah, and I think now it is annual GDP is like per capita is 2100. I think it has gone up to $2100 at this point of time.
2200
Yeah,
something, if I'm not
2200 or
wrong.
something,
Close to
close to that.
close to the
And
figure.
the aim is to become $10,000 per annum, like then you become a middle income country and all of that. And I
That's
mean,
correct.
and very commonly I hear people say India's challenge is how, what will it do when it becomes a middle income country, and there will be the middle income trap. I'm like, तेरा शादी नहीं हुआ है तो बच्चे का स्कूल का फी काय को देख रहा है.
एकदम सही बोला, एकदम सही बोला तूने.
I want your thoughts and opinions on this, because you are so knowledgeable on this topic, much more than me, on geopolitics and India standing and what is happening right now. Please let me know what's going on.
Okay, so middle income trap, etc. I won't really comment because macroeconomics is not my forte. But having said that, I think fourth largest economy and the way beyond. Let me say this, right? And getting that per capita income from 2200 5x to 10,000. Huge, huge jump, man, huge jump. Um, just one thing I think that the country needs to focus on. You go on Twitter, everybody's talking about it. You go wherever else there are well-informed people, they're talking about it. Get manufacturing, build factories. You cannot skip, the whole manufacturing phase and jump from agriculture to services directly. Sure, you did it so far. I'm sure that part of it will continue to be there. Um, but then moving from 20 to 100 to 10,000, you have to have manufacturing in house. You have to build your own stuff. You cannot just be dhanda and import and trade and export whatever, right? You do that, of course, that contributes a large chunk of your foreign exchange and the GDP, right? But manufacturing is the key. It's going to get more competitive. I mean, China, you see the whole trade saga that just panned out, right? China stopped exporting rare earth metals. They stopped exporting magnets. Um, People bought it from them, saying, it's so cheap there. Chalo manga lete China se. Why build our own, right? And one fine day they just stop. Um, Apple wants to move its manufacturing to India, and it's a Taiwanese company, if I'm not wrong, Foxconn. They or some other company, I don't know the name, but the thing is, there were Chinese engineers here, and one fine day they were just called back.
Yeah.
Um, so what do you do then, right? You've not built your own capability. There's someone else who's coming and teaching you. Um, a country that is sort of you have a love-hate relationship, with that country as well. Um, how are you going to manage that? And all countries are going to have this love-hate relationship with each other in the future, right? It started now. We are seeing it, right? The U.S putting tariffs on their allies. I saw a news piece where some of their I think IC worker, IC force, right? They went and arrested some 300 plus Koreans from a Hyundai factory. Korea claims they had valid work visas, etc. South Korea is a US ally. The US has a base and multiple bases there. Um, so this thing will continue. So any country स्वावलंबी आत्मनिर्भरता इट इज ट्रू और वो है और वो आज नहीं करेगा तो 10 साल बाद में बहुत दर्द होने वाला है फ्रैंकली. सो 20 वो 10,000 वगैरह तो भूल ही जाओ. लाइक यू सेड राइट, शादी नहीं हुआ, बच्चे का फीस, पहले बीवी ढूंढो, पहले अपने आप को काबिल बनाओ, फिर बीवी ढूंढो, and then talk about the next steps. So yeah, that's about it, man.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a beautiful one because I think people, and you made a very beautiful point, right? Like, boss, you have leapfrog. The term is leapfrog, right? Like you have
Yeah.
not done manufacturing and directly services mein ghus gaye, and then now you're getting into those hyper local services because of the internet revolution and this and that, right? And essentially, our moat is cheap labor. Okay, it is
Yep.
cheap. Let's be frank, it is cheap labor, and even that I would say is an economic term. If you, the way I see it is that you are just exploiting an unskilled population. Okay, you are making the best use of an unskilled population, and we should pray to God that thank God for the internet, because without it, I don't know what we would have been able to do. Okay, as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
And somewhere, I mean, Dr. Raghuram Rajan says ki manufacturing mat karo and all. I don't know why he says that. I mean, he's better than us in a lot of ways, but we leave it up to him. But I humbly disagree, where I feel ki even if we are bad at it, we should try it. Even if we're bad at it, dude, we have the scale that no one has. Please understand, we have the scale that
Exactly.
no one has, and we are too big to fail. And kuch bhi karke apne ko, they will make us succeed, because there is a China plus one strategy going on. Okay,
Yes.
65% of the mobile phones, or 55%, majority essentially, 50 ke upar, in the US are exported from India today. They're assembled in India today, right? And that number was less than
Yeah.
half of that just a few years ago, right? Apple is saying that almost all of our
Right.
phones are going to be assembled in India, manufactured in India, and sent across to the US, right? And people comment, assembly ho raha hai, manufacturing nahi. अरे भिखारी, तेरे को एंट्री मिल रहा है वहां पे, तू वहां पे बोल रहा है कि इसमें बिरयानी नहीं है, इसमें सिर्फ पुलाव है. डोंट से दैट, से कि आपको बुलाया है. आपको मतलब, व्हाई डू पीपल हैव सच, you know,
Yeah.
such criticism, such छोटू छोटू horrible criticism. We are not manufacturing. अरे कैसे करेगा तू? पहला 10वीं पास कर, फिर जाके तू ग्रेजुएशन होगा ना. Like, tell me I'm wrong, or tell me what are your thoughts on this.
No, you are absolutely right. I think we all have high aspirations. Sometimes even I tend to be a little critical, saying कि assembly है, manufacturing नहीं है. I think what is important, Saurabh, is that we we have to learn. That is one place where I really admire China. Whatever they did with whatever methods they use, there can be a lot of debate and discussion around that, right? But what is important is they got the technology and they learned, and then they made it their own, right? That is the way. We don't do it, we're not going to get anywhere. We are always going to be dependent. And I'll give you another example. While I was thinking over this whole conversation, right? I remember that one point that one of the IT company majors, and let me name him, Nandan Nilekani made, right? He said that leave the tech to the Silicon Valley big boys, and India will be a use case capital, right? I mean, how how can you even say that? How can you even say that, right? Do you want to be a digital colony for the rest of your life? So yes, I think um, one cannot really. I would say criticism has its place, um, and I think there is a positive side to it as well. That okay, आज असेंबली कर रहे हैं बट कल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए लेट्स स्टार्ट मूविंग टुवर्ड्स दैट, राइट? सिर्फ ये करेंगे या सिर्फ वो करेंगे doesn't work that way. That is my frank opinion on this topic.
That's good to know. You know, honestly, and thank God, like, because I feel like a madman whenever I go online and I see the doom and gloom. I'm like, kya chalu hai? I think there's a poverty of aspiration. India suffers from both extremes. There is a poverty of aspiration, and there is exuberance that does not sit in reality. कि भाई हम लोग नहीं है
Yeah,
विश्वगुरु,
yeah, yeah,
नहीं नहीं, हम लोग विश्वगुरु नहीं है. और हम, we are not even idiots, right? We stood our own in
yeah.
the recent tariff debate. We have stood our own, and I see, I'm still unhappy the way it has transpired. Okay, in the month of April,
Mhm.
when Liberation Day happened and tariffs were announced, India was one of the first countries who had anticipated it, and we had sent across people, a delegation over there, ki let's do an FTA. We already did one with the
Yeah.
UK, we did one with Europe, EU, and America के साथ तो हम कर ही रहे हैं कि we are like अरे कर लेंगे. As I was saying that, you know, there has to be a balance between those two, that don't have doom and gloom and don't have, you know, too much exuberance also. And coming back, so right now wherever we are, something has gone wrong in terms of the negotiations,
Yeah.
right? Which is what I'm sad about. I just hope it works out, and the reason is because, and अभी जो GST bonanza अभी जो निकला है, that has happened purely because the negotiations haven't gone the way we wanted them to go, right? And अभी जाके मेरे को पता चल रहा है कि जो टीवी सस्ता हो रहा है, 1.5 लाख रुपए से नेक्सॉन सस्ता हो रहा है, टाटा एंड महिंद्रा का गाड़ी. So
Yeah.
all those things are fine, but we, India only implements all this when we are in trouble. Our best economic reforms have always been there ki wo gun on head. We only
Yes.
work in gun on head on with gun on head is what I personally feel. I don't know. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, at this point, given where we are in the world stage, right? Economically, militarily, um, the whole optics of it, right? I mean, people talk about the prime minister being an important person who influences war outcomes, etc. And I know there's a lot of stuff that's happened, right? We weren't here like a few decades ago, but we are here today. And it's important that we recognize it, we respect it, and we start sort of behaving a little more responsibly. उस स्टेज पे पहुंचा है तो फिर यार उससे दो लेवल नीचे के बिहेवियर से आप आगे नहीं बढ़ोगे और ना आप उस स्टेज तक रहोगे. So I think that is very important. So being reactive, is not going to help. I know you're trying to save money. We're still a growing economy. We can't just print dollars the way the US can, etc. But I think now is the time to really, really be proactive, have those policies in place, cut GST, give PLI. And I think PLI is one of the most beautiful policy. I love it. Give PLI benefits. Make sure the money reaches the end person, and also put in checks and balances so that they use it with the right integrity. Right? I think that all of this has to be done proactively. Also, I think I'm not an expert to comment on this, but it's my personal view that there needs to be a lot more government industry partnership, more people from the industry who have actually done things with the right integrity, right? Need to be advising the government. Maybe they can be made program managers, right? They can actually run those programs, and the burden doesn't really fall completely on the IAS and the whole administrative cadre, because I know that they have their own stuff to deal with, right? And the burden is only going to increase. The responsibilities are only going to increase in the coming years. You're dealing with behaving responsibly. You're dealing with multi polarism. You're dealing with indigenization, etc., etc. All of this is coming together. There is speculation that there might be military conflicts in the future as well, right, involving India. Um, how are we going to manage that? If we don't get ready and plan for it today, we don't want to be where Russia is or where Ukraine is today. You don't want to be in either country's position.
Yeah, that's a very important point, right? And I want to then link it together to the tech conversation. कि हम बोल रहे हैं कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग अभी
Sure.
बढ़ाओ, प्रोडक्टिविटी बढ़ाओ, एफिशिएंसी ये वो, but when robotics really comes in, Siddharth, right? When and I remember Mr. Nitin Gadkari, our union minister, he said, "I will not let driverless cars ever enter India because there is at least 1 million drivers in India who rely on that as a profession." Now, the politics aside,
Okay.
uh, there is a very real danger, like one could say theoretically, that automation will reduce the dependency on India for for manufacturing, and the bus that was so badly missed by almost 30-40 years by India on manufacturing. Do you think it is too late? Do you think technology is progressing at a rate where we won't be able to do this? What do you say?
No, I don't think it's too late. I think India still has the cost advantage. And I can tell you this because I work with a couple of companies that are in this whole space. And I clearly know that they can deliver the same output as a European robot or even better times at a fraction of the cost. So India still has the cost advantage and it will be there for the foreseeable future. The next important thing for us to recognize is that, you know, there are countries that move at a certain speed. Given all our challenges, even with all our issues, I think we are moving faster. If I really have to compare India and Europe, bro, you should study Europe. I know a bit about it, but look at manufacturing there. It's a case study in itself. I think we are doing much better than that. I think our real competition, and also someone we should be looking up to, is China, because they move at a lightning speed. They can construct a factory overnight, and I'm not exaggerating. They do it, and that is the real competition, right? That is who we really have to look up to. So India will be, a relevant player even in the future, even with automation, given the cost advantage, given the speed. However, will it really grab a meaningful share from China, which is the powerful, or the number one manufacturing country in this world? I think that is something that remains to be seen, right? But will it have its own advantages over some of the Western economies? Absolutely, 100%, no doubt about it. But having said that, sort of, I want to add a few more things. I have a friend who runs a toy factory on the outskirts of Bombay. He tells me, यार वसई में हफ्ते में 2 दिन इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जाता है. गुजरात में नहीं जाता. Now this kind of disparity in issues, right? They need to be resolved pronto, right? You can't say in like in 20 we're in 2025. आज भी जाता है. So 1995 I still understand, जाता है, समझ में आता है. आज भी आता है, इसलिए आज भी जाता है. So, you want to be competitive, solve all of these basic things here, and get cracking. I mean, there's no excuse there. Yeah,
Yeah, that
it's conditional.
yeah. The way I see it, if I am, people don't realize the importance of this. It's like saying कि हाँ ऑफिस में काम करो, बट तेरा कंपटीशन को 8 घंटा लैपटॉप मिलेगा, तेरे को सिर्फ 6 घंटा मिलेगा, बिकॉज तेरा लैपटॉप का बैटरी के लिए चार्जिंग का ये पॉइंट नहीं है हमारे यहाँ पे. अब तेरा वाट लग गया. अब तू कितना टाइम, यू आर बेसिकली फाइटिंग विद वन हैंड बिहाइंड योर बैक, which is the
Yep,
challenge. And I think which is why our standard of living is not going to improve for another 10-15 years, is what I keep telling people, because the government is now focusing on जो चीज 50 साल पहले होना चाहिए था. अभी वी आर लाइक, अरे
correct,
इलेक्ट्रिसिटी पहुंचाओ, उधर उधर पानी नहीं जाना चाहिए,
correct.
उधर अभी लाइट बिजली होना चाहिए, कोल्ड स्टोरेज का किल्लत मैं जब बच्चा था तब से है. द लॉजिस्टिकल,
Yeah,
strength, anti fragile, your logistical chains are, can be done only when you have cold storage, right? Like in a lot of ways,
yes,
that's a huge challenge for us.
yep,
And land acquisition is a problem. अगर तेरे को data center भी डालने का है तो you have to like burn through money and regulation and so on and so forth, right? So India is trying to solve those problems, and you are right, until those are solved we are not competing with them, right? My only
yeah,
worry, yeah,
absolutely.
and my only worry is
Hmm.
that while technology wise we are very good, we are coming up, what about the employment? Because this, at some point, I think India already has a UBI program the world is not aware of. It's called Narega. The Narega is a
Yeah,
UBI program. It's universal
it is.
basic
It
income.
is.
People have
Yep.
no clue that India is running one of the world's biggest UBI programs. I think our marketing sucks. Our PR is pathetic. I mean, please tell me more about it. What do you think? Does India have a branding problem?
India has a huge branding problem, a massive branding problem. Um, there is, we like the stuff that we do, right? There are things that happen at. I'll give you an example, right? IIT Madras, amazing institute, a lot of great things coming out of it. Why don't people talk about it? Why don't people know about it? Why is it that a few people who read a few things or are on Twitter, they know things, or maybe you read the newspapers, right? So why didn't someone? in the US really reach out and put in money. Sure, now because Arvind Srinivas is from IIT Madras, Perplexity CEO, he's sort of brought the whole institution to the fore, right? But otherwise, not a lot of people knew about it, right? Or let me say, they knew that there's an IIT. They just didn't know what the kind of amazing work that they do. So I think that is one example. The second thing I'll give you, I follow military affairs quite a bit. The whole thing about Operation Sindoor, right? Who brought down how many jets or whatever, yeah, whatever it is. I think, uh, and I have to give it to Pakistan, man, because whatever whatever they did, the way they project themselves, right? I mean, it's like, oh, we won the whole thing. Controlling the narrative is 101 of PR and marketing. I don't know how we do not understand that.
I do. I
Even in
do.
2025.
I do. I'm sorry. I have an answer for this. Sorry to cut you off, but I give -5
Oh,
class
sorry.
participation. But I cannot help myself over here. The reason we are so bad at PR, the reason we are so bad at building the narrative, is because the Pakistanis understand that they are a far smaller and a far weaker nation. Right? They know the only thing that they can do is hawabaji, a puffer fish. That entire country is a puffer fish, right? कि हम इतू है, हम इतना दिखाएंगे अपने आप को, whether physically
Correct.
or narratively. And India,
Yeah.
I sometimes feel our own leaders sometimes have drank the Kool-Aid, and they are like कि
Yeah.
हम है विश्व गुरु. You है, अरे अरे okay, you, and it was a clear cut military victory which was taken away from us because we don't know how to portray a military
Yes.
victory. Okay, we have a very
Yes.
insular view of the world, and it is cultural. It's a stretch, but bear with me. It is no
Yes.
Indian elder has ever been questioned, culturally speaking, right? कि ये क्यों किया, या ऐसा क्यों है, आपने जो बोला वो सच्ची में है क्या? How dare you? We are better because we are better.
Yes.
हमने बोल दिया तो सही है,
Yeah.
उसको नहीं मानना है, वो नहीं मानेगा. अरे ऐसा थोड़ी होता है. And isn't propaganda a huge part of ministry, like war efforts? Like for thousands
Oh,
of years,
absolutely.
human beings have been using narratives to win and lose wars. Like what is wrong with our people? I think it's a very kaka kaku setup that we have, which is like PIB का एक report आता है, and वो
Yeah.
report पढ़ने में मेरा आँख ऐसा होता है, where the zoom capabilities of my phone are tested. I'm like, अरे बाप रे, who's
Yeah.
reading this? Dude, the CNN correspondent was based out of Islamabad. तो मैंने बोला, ओके नाइस, अपना न्यू दिल्ली का correspondent किधर है CNN का? नहीं है,
हाँ.
नहीं है.
नहीं नहीं.
वो क्यों? ऑफ कोर्स ही इज सेइंग गुड थिंग्स अबाउट द पाकिस्तानी मिलिट्री, वो उसको घर जाने का है वापस. एंड आई एम सिटिंग हियर इन
सही है.
मुंबई. यार दिल्ली में जगह कम पड़ी है कि हमारे सीएनएन के 2 लोग आके नहीं बैठ सकते? वैसे तो आधा देश वहां पे अपना वाट लगाता रहता है. लाइक गेट टू सीएनएन पीपल, गेट सम सीबीएस गाय, गेट अ फॉक्स गाय. वो तो अपना नसीब, वो थोड़ा वो अल जजीरा का एक दो, अल जजीरा नहीं, देयर वाज सम स्काई न्यूज दैट लेडी शी डिड सम.
Yeah.
Okay, we got lucky. One YouTuber picked it up, Asmon Gold, and tab jaake millions of people understood. But what is the last line everyone is talking about internationally? It is like jets were down on both sides, and Chinese weapons showed their prowess. Ultimately, there
Yeah.
was no definition of India showcasing its power. We were equated. Forget about hyphenation. We were equated in the minds of the world. That is our biggest failure, I personally feel.
It is, and it needs to change. Like I said, right? You need to start behaving like you're the fourth largest economy and going on to third. Um, and this has to change. You can't. Well said. It is cultural, right? And I just hope that the next gen that comes in, whoever the powers that be, right, they understand it better, and they change things for the better, because we're not in the 1980s, and you so aptly described it, right? Press PIB report coming in, and oh yeah, I could just visualize it. I'm like, we're in 2025. How can you do this? Yeah, but it happens, but it has to change.
No, it's a good thing. I think they have figured it out. At this point, even the biggest podcasts in the country, ANI podcast and all, are like, we lost the narrative for. and that is a good thing कि these people are like कि okay ये गलती हुआ है अपने से, so hopefully going forward we'll sort it out. But enough about things that we don't know much about, at least the nitty-gritties of it. But any
Yeah.
anything else you want to touch upon, said, like something which I have not probably asked you, something which you feel we don't talk about enough, what do you want to last message to our audience?
Yeah, I think there's this whole thing about tech and innovation, and I spoke a lot about it, right? Saying that multipolarity, etc., etc. We are getting into a world where we have to be more and more Atmanirbhar. I am going back to that particular point. We have a ton of talent. I think um, Indian folks, right? Some of the best brains in the world, very highly trusted, very hardworking as well. And this I can tell you, having seen folks across Europe, Indian folks across Europe, US, and in India, huge trust factor. Chor nahi hai, that's very important to be seen as trustworthy. But they need an ecosystem, to develop. Let me talk about deep tech because I work with that sector very closely, right? They need an ecosystem to develop robots, to develop robotic parts, even the lenses, the processors. Today, everybody imports NVIDIA chips. Um, Tomorrow, what if, whatever, NVIDIA faces its own headwinds, right? Or they might have to prioritize certain customers over others. What will you do then, right? So there has to be an ecosystem that thinks about these kind of things. Um, the US and all of this can be weaponized, by the way. The US will have its own tech ecosystem. China will have it. Europe is sort of building it. But India, as a responsible upcoming country and power, has to recognize that they have to build this ecosystem, and it cannot be random 10 CR grant or some fancy program or something like that. Um, बहुत solid effort करना पड़ेगा, and not just in the IITs, because the IITs have the best in class labs, etc. It has to be in the NITs. It has to be in, let's say, the Mumbai University colleges or any of the local colleges, engineering colleges. It that has to trickle down. People will complain saying budget nahi hai, aisa nahi hai, waisa nahi hai. But boss, you can't complain anymore. You want to produce, you want to compete seriously on the global world stage. You have to start, building the whole product right there in that engineering school as well. For finance or whatever, right? So that ecosystem has to come into play. The next thing is a very strong sense of wanting to compete globally. Um, there is going to be a fight. We have aspirations. We want to grow our per capita income 5x. A ton of that is going to come through exports. A lot is going to come from consumption, of course. A lot of it is going to come from exports. And that export happen not just to South Asian countries and neighbors, but to Western economies who pay you top dollar for the top goods that you produce. So there has to be more of that view as well. So I think what that is a thought that I really want to leave with our viewers, that and viewers, all viewers, right, students and the decision makers and whoever else is watching this, right. We have the human capital, we have some of the best brains. Give them the ecosystems, give them a chance to fail. Don't play the scarcity game here. And that is the only way you're going to grow in the future, and secure employment, create a better India in 2035 and beyond.
That's a beautiful statement, Sid. I'm so glad we did this. I apologize, I was a month late, but a lot of things were going on, and I'll let you
No
know,
problem.
offline later. But this was so well said that we need to compete globally. अभी and it can't happen. एक तुक्का लग गया, कोई आईआईटी मद्रास का निकल गया, कोई आईआईटी दिल्ली का निकल गया. ये एनआईटी और बीजेटी और एसपी, सरदार पटेल हर लेवल पे आना चाहिए. And we really need to, and we have the talent. We have the talent, frankly
Yeah.
speaking. and only then will we be able to be taken seriously, frankly. And you know and that effort, at least if we try, if that mentality ki world class banana hai, tab जाके एक level पे कुछ बनेगा. Without that mentality we're not going to achieve that,
Yes,
right? So yeah, I mean,
exactly.
that's really something to take home. Thank you so much, Sid. How can people follow you? I think you can be followed on LinkedIn, where you are Siddharth Sawant on LinkedIn. I will put in, I'll put in the description, folks. Please go in the
Yeah,
description, and there will be a link.
yeah.
Please follow Sid over there. And anything else, anywhere else you want to plug? Anything else you want to plug, Sid?
Yeah, yeah. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Twitter. I write very, very often about the tech, and I love giving gyan. But but yeah, mentoring, coaching, and I do it pro bono. A lot of it as well for underprivileged students specifically. So anybody wants to reach out, especially people who don't have the means, please feel free. I can help you. If I'm not available, I will connect you to someone else who can. So yeah, that's a thought I want to leave with my viewers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sid. This was such an amazing episode. I look forward to hosting you again, and all the best for everything that you're going to do. Thank you so much, Sid.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saurabh.